Partnerem odcinka jest Oanda TMS Brokers, dom maklerski oferujący prawie 4000 instrumentów, w tym akcje, ETF-y, kontrakty CFD. Broker oferuje promocyjne oprocentowanie wolnych środków na rachunku, można uzyskać nawet 7% w skali roku. Obowiązują warunki, dowiedz się więcej klikając link w opisie odcinka.
The invitation and the kind introduction. You know, I've heard a lot now that that this book came as a surprise here in Poland, and certainly it came as a surprise in England where I live, because Germany has sort of this reputation of being a very powerful economy, a very successful economy. It built up that reputation for many years, and I'm not denying that success. You know, the book is not about the denial of Germany's success that lasted, I would say, until about the first decade of this century. So Germany was still a reasonable economic performer, 2015, but for reasons that are not, the difficulties were already starting at that, a lot longer. And the book goes into the history. You know, there were the first signs of things going wrong in the 1980s. But it wasn't visible. It wasn't yet sort of the big downturn in Germany. That didn't happen. It was when they started to make misjudgments about the world, misjudgments about technology, and the misjudgment about technology they made was about digital technology. When the digital technologies became prevalent in Germany in the 1990s, or in the world in the 1990s. Germany wasn't interested. Germany was mainly interested in perfecting what it did best, perfecting the diesel engine, perfecting mechanical engineering procedures. When they realized they had an economic crisis, they reformed the system quite successfully. They were also lucky. Eurozone crisis gave them a very cheap exchange rate. It was a competitiveness boost. They had a few things going in their favor, but the luck ran out in 2015, 2016, in the middle of the last decade. And that's when, the first thing that happened was Brexit, because Britain was the biggest absorber. It wasn't the biggest trading partner of Germany, but it was the biggest absorber of Germany's export surpluses. So if you look at the German current account, which measures basically the trading relationship, it measures a few more items as well. But most of the current account consists of trade in goods and services. If you look, Germany's largest current account surplus was with the UK. Then came Brexit, and then this ended because Britain disentangled itself away from the supply chain that Germany insisted on or relied on. And then came a number of shocks that we all know: the pandemic, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and these are the events I covered in the election of Donald Trump and the imposition of tariffs, which is possibly the biggest shock. We have to see how it pans out, but this is going to be a very, very big shock. So Germany had a very lucky streak, and Polish and East European accession to the EU in 2004 was a big advantage for Germany. Germany was a big supporter of this. Because it played with Germany's industrial model. It allowed German industry to diversify, and a lot of people talk about the success of German economic reforms in 2003 to 2004. A lot of the fact that German business became more profitable had to do with its supply chains, with the fact of its East European production, and this played a huge role in the German success of that decade. And the euro crisis, the devaluation of the euro, were big factors that helped German industry, and the fact that German products were at that point still, world leading. And if you remember, or if you go back to 2004, the German car industry had a crisis, but it was not a product crisis. The German cars were good in 2004. They were too expensive to make, but they were good. Today, it's a different story. Today, the German cars are still good cars, but the competitor in China is ahead, certainly on electric cars. And we all know that electric cars is where the whole industry is heading towards. And Germany is no longer leading in the race for the electric car. The German car industry did not invest in this technology. The German car industry doubled down on diesel. It opposed the introduction of the electric car. I write a whole section in my book on the car industry, and there was a famous quote by the head of Volkswagen, former head of Volkswagen, Ferdinand Piëch. He was a very famous, German car manager. He was part of the Porsche family, and he said that there is no space for an electric car in my garage. And he had a big garage. This is the guy, he has Volkswagen has many cars, not just Volkswagen. They have Audi, they have Seat, they have Skoda, but then they also have Bentley. They have, I think there's an Italian. I always keep them mixed up. Is it Maserati or Lamborghini? One of them. Bentley, yeah, they have Bentley. So he got all these cars in his garage, but he didn't have space for an electric car, and that was the culture. And it was only until the latter part of the last decade that they realized, oh my God, we have to start investing. And when they did, they underestimated the task. The Chinese had been at it for a long time, but the Germans didn't take the Chinese very seriously. So what sort of happened there was sort of a national misjudgment. It wasn't just Volkswagen. The other car companies made the same misjudgment. The German government made the same misjudgment. It was a national misjudgment. Everybody made that misjudgment. They all thought the electric cars is not for serious people. That was this is just not a serious car because it doesn't have an engine, it doesn't have parts. It's not an engineering product, and it isn't an engineering product. The electrical car is a digital device. If you look at if you go into a Tesla, the first thing you notice there's sort of this iPad device in the middle, and that's what this car is. This car is ultimately a glorified iPad. It's an iPad with wheels, but it's ultimately what it is. It's an iPad. It's a digital device, another device. And German car makers are not digital people. You go into the head office of a German car company, they are not digital people. They are not, they're formal. They're engineering. They're engineers. They're old-fashioned. The culture of the company couldn't be more different than the culture at places like Tesla or the Chinese manufacturers. A completely different world. So we have basically now a situation where the crisis of this industry is not just about cost. They have a cost problem. I would acknowledge that, but they have a product problem. And the product problem is something they cannot fix through a reform, by making labor cheaper, or even by producing cheaper, by outsourcing production. They have a genuine innovation problem. And that's a problem that we see in many areas of industry, and what some economists have called the mid-technology trap. And it's a good way of putting this, because these technologies that they're good at, like the diesel car. Think about the diesel car for a second. It's really difficult. I wouldn't know how to build a diesel car. It's very, very complicated. There are thousands of parts in it. Smart people have put a lot of effort into developing the diesel engine to the standard that they developed, because the original diesel engine wasn't a performing engine. The original diesel engine was an engine for tractors and lorries. So they turned this into a high performance engine. It was an engineering marvel, whereas the electric engine is primitive by comparison. There's virtually nothing in it that would bring joy to an engineer. But the digital device, most of the value added in the next generation, right now it's a lot of batteries, and that will continue. But the value added in the next generation, it will be software, it's automatic driving. The Germans have not invested in this, and they're not ahead of this in the game. So I see a decline in the industry. I think the Germans will still make cars, but I think our destiny is that of becoming junior partners to China in the long run. We are not going to be because the people who run the show are the people who have the technology. And that used to be the Germans. The Germans used to run the show in other countries too, because they had the technology. If the Chinese have the technology, they will be the senior partner in that relationship. And that will be, and this is sort of the nature of the crisis. It's different from previous ones. And when I call this thing Kaput, Kaput's a bit of a joke, but everybody understands what it means. The model is broken. The model of it relied on a technology and a particular procedure and a particular way of doing business, and they're both broken. The model, the car, the kind of the engineering technology that's behind it, but also the idea that one produces physical goods for export, to export more than one imports, which I call the neo-mercantilism of Germany. All these things are broken. It doesn't mean that Germany will sort of decline in sort of horror. Decline is gentle. We see at the moment Germany is not growing. For this year, we expect another year of zero growth, maybe next year 0.5%. The IMF estimates German long-term potential growth at approximately 0.7% per year. So that's the structural growth. The average, the typical growth Germany can look ahead without reforms. I see no reforms on the horizon. The current government is not going to be a reforming one. So that's a number one should take into account, 0.7%. Now, at 0.7%, Germany is declining relative to the rest of the world. That's clearly, but it's not dramatic. But if you wake up in 20 years, the German, you will find that many parts of Poland will be as rich and income rich as many parts of Germany, and probably more income rich than Eastern Germany. So there will be, a shift for as long as Poland continues to grow with a fairly impressive growth rates of the past decade. One would expect this to, I would expect not necessarily to see a catch up in 10 or 20 years, but coming close to it. That's what decline will look like. It will be gentle, and it will be, there will still be rich people there. I think that is my likely scenario. It's not one of dramatic collapse, but it is one of continued decline. And I see not even politics on the horizon that tries to undo this or change this around. So I think this is going to be for the ages.
Okay, thank you very much for this introduction. Obviously, we just touched the surface of the book, of the Kaput. Dla Państwa informacji chciałbym powiedzieć, że książkę tą, którą można nabyć tutaj, z tyłu w pomieszczeniu, oraz inne książki wydawnictwa. Będziemy używać jednego mikrofonu. Teraz o komentarz do wypowiedzi pana Münchaua chciałbym poprosić panią dr Justynę Schulz, wieloletnią dyrektor Instytutu Zachodniego oraz ekspertkę do spraw ekonomicznych. Proszę bardzo.
Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękuję za zaproszenie do tej debaty. To dla mnie zaszczyt, że mogę tutaj dyskutować na tematy ekonomiczne właśnie z tak znakomitym ekspertem, którego analizy Financial Times, czy teraz w tym Eurointelligence na co dzień czytamy i też bierzemy je pod uwagę, przygotowując nasze ekspertyzy. Ale tutaj w związku z tym, że chcielibyśmy otworzyć też debatę dla Państwa, ja sobie pozwolę na pewne kontrowersyjne tezy, żebyśmy mogli tutaj zarysować pewną przestrzeń do dyskusji. Bo rzeczywiście książka jest napisana bardzo z taką, w takim bardzo energicznym stylu, przystępnym również dla nieekonomistów i w swoich tezach bardzo przekonywująca co do tego, że model niemiecki nazywany w tej książce albo neomerkantylistycznym, albo ordoliberalnym, też się pojawia nazwa społeczna gospodarka rynkowa, jest modelem po pierwsze, który się teraz, jego okres świetny się kończy, a po drugie, że ten model jest odpowiedzialny za obecną sytuację w Niemczech. I ten model, może ja tylko Państwu krótko skomentuję, tak jak przedstawia go autor, zakłada, właśnie bazuje na dużym udziale przemysłu, jak również na koncentracji na nadwyżkach handlowych, to znaczy eksport i osiąganie nadwyżek handlowych. Jest finansowany poprzez system, głównie system bankowy. I jeden bardzo ważny aspekt, że zakłada pewne przywództwo technologiczne. I ja, może odpowiadając też na te tezy autora, ja nie zgadzałabym się z tą tezą, że to model ordoliberalny, czy ta cała otoczka instytucjonalna w Niemczech są przyczyną tego, że Niemcy znajdują się obecnie w takiej sytuacji, no, że spadły praktycznie do drugiej ligi. Chciałabym tylko przypomnieć, że to jest model, do którego odwołują się, czy odwoływały się państwa Azji Południowej, no nie wiem, Japonia, Korea, Chiny. U nas w naszej konstytucji też społeczna gospodarka rynkowa jest wymieniana jako ten taki normatywny model, również w dokumentach europejskich. I z tego, jak przynajmniej analizowaliśmy obecną umowę koalicyjną, również ta nowa koalicja nadal hołduje tym wszystkim regulacjom, które są charakterystyczne dla tego modelu. To znaczy obstawanie przy tym systemie bankowym trzyfilarowym, płace w jak największym stopniu uzgadniane w ramach umów taryfowych. I jak również, co było dla mnie ciekawe, wzmocnienie własności państwa w branżach przyszłości, to znaczy głównie w branżach obronnych. No i teraz pytanie, czy to jest błąd, czy to jest jednak ta droga, która zapewniała Niemcom rozwój, nie tylko zresztą Niemcom, i to przywództwo. I to, co dla mnie jest takim pytaniem, które stawia też autor, to jest to, dlaczego Niemcy straciły to przywództwo technologiczne. Jak tam w którymś momencie jest właśnie napisane, że zdecydowały się na to, żeby nie inwestować w nowe technologie, tutaj głównie cyfrowe, i perfekcjonizować to, co do tej pory robiły jak najlepiej, no właśnie tą swoją inżynierię. I ja tutaj poszukiwałabym się jednak przyczyn takich strukturalnych i te czynniki, o których Pan tutaj wspominał, to znaczy wprowadzenie euro, czy otwarcie rynków Europy Środkowo-Wschodniej i Rosji można traktować jako coś, co było korzystne dla Niemiec, ale również można traktować jako czynniki, które osłabiły w Niemczech taką presję na innowacje, na poszukiwanie nowych rozwiązań i na konkurowanie właśnie poprzez nowe technologie, a nie zarabianie tymi swoimi sprawdzonymi produktami, które dla Europy Środkowo-Wschodniej były atrakcyjne, no ale które w pewnym stopniu uśpiły taki, powiedzmy, taki drive do innowacji, który zawsze cechował jednak gospodarkę niemiecką. W związku z czym ja bym powiedziała, że nie tyle ten ordoliberalny system jest przyczyną, no powiedzmy, takiego osłabienia pozycji Niemiec, ale fakt, że po transformacji te zasady ordoliberalne nie były wprowadzane ani w Niemczech Wschodnich, ani w Europie Środkowo-Wschodniej, to znaczy otworzono rynki bez budowania konkurencyjności dla firm zachodnich. To się wydawało bardzo dużym atutem na początku, ale w dłuższej perspektywie okazało się zwodnicze, bo to nie tylko Niemcy straciły taką międzynarodową konkurencyjność. Również, no ja nie wiem, no może Holandię, może kraje skandynawskie można pokazać jako przykład państw, które są w tej czołówce technologicznej, natomiast południe Europy, Francja, tutaj rzeczywiście mamy pewną no, taką dywergencję właśnie, nawet dywergencję między tymi krajami a Niemcami, co jeszcze pokazuje, jak duża jest tam odstęp również w stosunku do Stanów Zjednoczonych. Także ja tutaj bym właśnie uwzględnienie jednak tego czynnika Europy Środkowo-Wschodniej, że tutaj nie powstała konkurencja ze względu na warunki, w jakich odbywała się transformacja dla firm zachodnich, osłabiło konkurencyjność tych firm w kontekście takim międzynarodowym.
Münchau, would you like to respond? Comment.
Thank you. I mean, the order liberal system, as it was designed in the early, in the 40s, was designed in the prison cells of the Nazis by professors who were imprisoned and who sort of devised a whole sort of economic system for the post-war era. It was blind to sectors. The original order liberal system was a free market system. What became of it in Germany was something very different. So I think we're probably in agreement about, the original order liberal system that was essentially premised on, a state not caring about it. It was not intending to be mercantilist. The order liberals were not mercantilists. The order liberals were not industry people. But over the years, the German system became very much focused on generating export surpluses. So I'm not using the word order liberal very much because I remember the debates in Germany. People, think the word social market economy is. I never liked the term because it meant different things to different people. It's not a precise definition of what it is. Whereas, conservatives have a much more liberal definition than the left, for example. But the characteristics of the German system is not that it is order liberal, because I don't think it is order liberal. It hasn't been order liberal for a long time. I think the characteristics of the German system is that it is mercantilist. And by mercantilist, I mean designed to produce export surpluses. And one has to sort of think about this. This is not a moral argument. If you say if Germany can be viable producing export surpluses, let's do it. The reason why this is not sustainable is the simple fact that if you're the third largest economy in the world, and this is where Germany is different from Poland, Germany is different from all the other economies. You're the third in Europe. You're the third largest economy in the world. And if China, as the second largest economy in the world, both pursue the same system of running more exports than imports, and there has to be someone in the world who has to do more imports than exports. Because in the world, the imports and exports add to zero. This is, the arithmetic inevitability of economics. Our current accounts add to zero. Not in each of our countries, but our current accounts globally add to zero. It depended on America absorbing those surpluses. You cannot run the system unless America absorbs those surpluses. That's why I'm saying this model ended. But I don't disagree with you on order liberalism, and I think the order liberal philosophy was actually the success of the German economy in the 50s and 60s. It was a free market economy. It broke away from fascism. Afterwards, there was a massive amount of energy in the German economy, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. I cite the example of the Aldi brothers, the Albrecht brothers, who lived in my hometown, and Karl Albrecht, the founder of the Aldi discount store. He was Germany's most successful businessman. He started off with a corner store, which he inherited from his mother. And the two brothers created an empire, a world empire. And when he died about 10 years ago, at the age of over 90, he had never seen a German chancellor in his life. This was a businessman. He was not a politician. He was unlike the politicians of today, which are much more, You know, if you're the head of a German conglomerate, you spend more time in Berlin than at your home office. You're walking in and out of the chancellor's office, impose regulation. And this is basically the way the system had worked. And a very important part of, especially of the car industry, the German car industry succeeded because it imposed its standards on the rest of the world. This is how it worked. What's the job description for the CEO of Volkswagen? It's to be able to be on good terms with whoever's the next German chancellor, because you've got to have access to that person to influence regulation. This is the German system, and this is not working anymore. So we have a decline. I mean, you asked the question, why has Germany failed to invest and to innovate? This is really the big question. I completely agree with you. And I think it is to do with the fact that there is a national arrogance about its own technology, a sort of a sense of superiority. Germans are very arrogant people in their own technology, and they made a national misjudgment. This is a national misjudgment in the sense of Germany is not very tolerant of minority opinions, and when the industry makes a judgment, they all make it. There is no space for dissents. It's not like, I mean, they have three car giants: Volkswagen, Mercedes, and BMW. And virtually all the other companies that make cars are part of the group, like Porsche is part of the Volkswagen group, etc. They all made that misjudgment, and the government made that misjudgment, and the government insisted on regulation that made that misjudgment, and so Brussels made that misjudgment. It was a chain of events that led to this national misjudgment on technology, and I've been a witness to this. And that's I remember the arrogant managers from German companies in the 1990s who felt that digital technology was not for serious people. And I cite this example of a conversation I had with a manager from a German company that developed mobile telephones in the 1990s. And they felt this was a silly little consumer devices. The real technology was like, exchanges, analog telephone exchanges. They were basically so enamored with their own technology and their own success that they didn't see the digital revolution coming in another part of the world, and they didn't take it seriously. And it was a national thing. And I've been witnessing this year in, year out, and there was a stubbornness about it that was quite astonishing. It's still partly persisting today. I mean, a lot more people realize that they need to invest in digital today, but there's still a lot of pushback against this idea. It's an astonishing characteristic.
We have a saying in Polish, I hope that the translators will get it right. Pycha kroczy przed upadkiem, as in reference to your word. I would like to shift the focus of our discussion from this neo-mercantilist ordoliberal terms. And one of the chapters of the book focuses on the debt break. And this book has been published in November, in the English version. The original version was published in November 2024. The Polish version appeared just now. And since the coming out of this book, something has changed. The debt break has been changed. Is it a dream come true, or is it a nightmare?
We have that saying in German too, by the way. There's another saying, Hybris kommt vor dem Fall. It's the same in German as it is. If the translation, I'm sure the translation is completely right. So I think this is something we have in common. There's another saying about the debt break. The question is, there's a Chinese saying, say, be careful what you wish for. And it's we all wish for the debt break to go, but the way it went, oh my God, it's not the way we wanted it to go. To have a change in the rule that you can just say, okay, we reform the debt break so that we can spend as much money as we can on arms. Now, that wasn't exactly the intention. The intention was to take investment out and keep arms inside. And because that's what a good fiscal rule does. A good fiscal rule says we for our consumption we should not borrow, but for our investments we can borrow. That's the fiscal rule. It's called the golden rule, sensible rule. Usually it works for many countries. Germany had given itself a rule that was much, much stricter. That's why the German fiscal position is so strong. I fear they will go in the opposite direction. But the most thing I fear about what's going to happen now, and you see this with the coalition agreement. This is a very bad coalition agreement. I have to say, very bad. Considering the problems, the structural decline we've been talking about, the lack of innovation, it's essentially the same system. There are minor changes. The big idea was exempting restaurants from VAT. That was sort of the big thing that Friedrich Merz got, and returning the diesel subsidy for farmers. You couldn't make this up. This is so ridiculously petty. If you think about the problems the country has, and you think you have to have these controversial, quite expensive policies in the mix, rather than actually talking about the problems that the economic model faces, or the tariffs, and there is no recognition. There's no recognition of any of this. Now the debt brake is reformed, and it's not really reformed. They made some emergency changes because they were running. Because what happened was, and Friedrich Merz recognized that he inherited a massive fiscal gap. The previous coalition left him with a massive fiscal gap of like 15 to 30 billion. And without the debt brake reform, he would have had to do austerity, a big austerity pact. That would have been mad. I think everybody agrees with that. That's a good thing he didn't do that. This is what the last coalition did. They saved money on Ukraine. They didn't have money for Ukraine. They only had the money they had previously agreed, but they cut the Ukraine budget from their 2025 budget provision. There was no more money for Ukraine. And they were saying, yeah, the money will come from the Russian reserves or some other. It will come from somewhere else, which obviously it doesn't come from somewhere else, because if Germany doesn't pay, that's basically what's going to happen. And so it was important that this happened. I agree, it's a good thing, but this is not the debt brake reform. This was like the emergency step to break it. The debt brake reform has yet to happen. They want to do this in the current parliament. They actually want to produce a long-term fiscal rule, which I don't think they need one. I think the EU has a fiscal rule which is sensible. I don't see the point in another fiscal rule. I think you just say, let's follow the EU fiscal rule and then everything is fine. But Germany always wanted its own fiscal rule because it can do it better.
Czy zgadza się Pani z tym, że to są racjonalne zasady fiskalne w Unii Europejskiej i czy rzeczywiście to jest tylko taka zaciągnięcie tego hamulca zadłużenia i teraz złamanie to tak jak rozbicie szybki, prawda, w autobusie, żeby pociągnąć. Czy rzeczywiście tak jest, czy może to jest bardziej głębsza zmiana systemowa, zmiana hamulca zadłużenia, czy ona idzie w Pani ocenie w dobrym kierunku?
Dziękuję bardzo za to pytanie. Ja muszę powiedzieć, że mnie odejście w tej formie, jaka obecna jest, od hamulca zadłużenia bardzo zaskoczyła. Chyba pod koniec zeszłego roku napisałam ekspertyzę, że to się nie stanie, ponieważ uważałam, że z CDU niemożliwe jest takie zupełne zarzucenie tego mechanizmu, ponieważ ten taki konserwatyzm fiskalny to była jedna z takich cech, która pozyskiwała również wyborców, pewne środowiska wyborców do CDU. No tutaj rzeczywiście przyszły kanclerz Merz bardzo zaskoczył. Na ogół jest to pozytywnie oceniane, no ale właśnie tutaj jest cała taka debata, czy żeby dokonać koniecznych zmian i reform potrzebne są pieniądze na początku, czy reguły fiskalne wymuszą te reformy. To znaczy, że właśnie pieniądze, które się ma od samego początku, doprowadzą do zaniechania tych reform. I ja bym postawiła taką tezę, oczywiście nie sprawdzimy jej już, ale swego czasu właśnie Gerhard Schröder jest pokazywany w niemieckiej debacie właśnie jako ten pozytywny kanclerz, który był w sumie ostatnim kanclerzem, który zdecydował się na takie mocne, strukturalne reformy, które częściowo kosztowały go później utratę stanowiska kanclerza. I moje pytanie jest, czy on zdecydował się na takie reformy, gdyby nie właśnie te fiskalne ramy narzucane przez Pakt Stabilności i czy on musząc, że w sumie brał na poważnie, mimo że to tam właśnie było wykroczenie, ale później brał na poważnie to zobowiązanie i chciał doprowadzić, żeby Niemcy spełniały te kryteria i zdecydował się na te reformy, które obecnie wszędzie są chwalone. I teraz pytanie, czy mając tak duży budżet do dyspozycji, klasa polityczna będzie na tyle silna, żeby zdecydować się na cięcia, które będą kosztowały wyborców, albo jednych, albo drugich, bo akurat obydwie partie reprezentują różne klasy. I w tym raporcie Dragiego zawsze było to założenie, że te pieniądze muszą być na początku, a potem będą następowały dzięki tym pieniądzom zmiany infrastrukturalne i tak dalej. Część powiedzmy, już nie chcemy tego słowa oldoliberalnych, ale takich typowo niemieckich ekonomistów uważa, że to jest błędna droga, że najpierw powinny być reformy, oszczędności, a potem dopiero inwestycje, właśnie takie, gdzie tutaj wyborcy czy większość parlamentarna zdecyduje, że można jeszcze dodatkowo się zadłużyć. Także ja bym chciała po prostu zwrócić uwagę na to, że często mówi się o atutach Niemiec, właśnie takie poluzowanie fiskalne, nie taka silna waluta, jakieś takie i uważa się, że to jest atut, a tak naprawdę w dłuższej perspektywie okazuje się to jako taki bardzo zwodnicze, sprowadzające na, chciałabym powiedzieć, złą drogę, ale w każdym razie zmniejszające ten nacisk na to, żeby się jeszcze więcej starać, poprawiać, udoskonalać i tak dalej. I jeszcze chciałam się tylko odnieść do tej pana interpretacji, że ta arogancja była silniejsza i tak dalej, ale to by w jakiś sposób przyczyło tym wszystkim, znaczy nie wszystkim, ale pewnym założeniom teorii ekonomicznych, bo to by wynikało, że arogancja była silniejsza niż ten animal spirits, żeby robić, generować zyski, odkrywać tam, bo tam w tych nowych technologiach tam były i są nadal te największe marże, największe zyski i dlaczego właśnie nie było takiego, to co zakładamy w sumie, że tak funkcjonuje gospodarka rynkowa, że przedsiębiorcy, jednostki odkrywają te szanse, tam inwestują, tam kierują swoje środki i tak dalej. I dlaczego to nie działa? Bo ja bym powiedziała tak, że ten model niemiecki, mimo że teraz Stany Zjednoczone nie odmawiają przyjmowania i absorbowania tych nadwyżek, mógłby nadal działać, gdyby Niemcy miały produkty tego pierwszego rzędu, tej pierwszej technologii, bo nawet dla chińskich produktów Trump zrobił wyjątek, dla tych, które są niezbędne dla amerykańskiego przemysłu czy dla amerykańskiej gospodarki. Czyli mając takie przywództwo technologiczne, można ten model nadal, ten model funkcjonuje, ale warunkiem jest właśnie spełnianie pewnych wysokich standardów jakości. I jeszcze tylko miałabym jedno pytanie takie do pierwszego pana, bo pan powiedział, że właśnie Stany Zjednoczone teraz nie spełniają tej funkcji, czy przestają pełnić tą funkcję absorbowania nadwyżek niemieckich. Jednocześnie podobną funkcję pełni dla nas gospodarka niemiecka. I teraz pan powiedział, że ta gospodarka niemiecka jest takim w tendencji spadającej, a jednak uważa pan, że my mamy szansę i Polska może się tutaj rozwijać w drugim kierunku po prostu. Jak tutaj by pan to może dokładnie wytłumaczył?
Zanim podam mikrofon, ukradła mi pani pytanie, bo chciałem właśnie to zadać z tego względu, że wydawnictwo Prześwity wydało także książkę profesora Marcina Piątkowskiego Złoty wiek, w której pada taka teza, że Polska jest najbliżej do Zachodu, do tego twardego rdzenia gospodarczego w swojej historii. Złoty wiek nie był w XV wieku, w czasach renesansu, tylko jest właśnie teraz. I trudno o większą dysproporcję. Z jednej strony mamy Złoty wiek, a z drugiej strony mamy Kaput. I w ten sposób chciałem właśnie zapytać o pana pomysły czy rekomendacje, ponieważ zarówno Polska, jak i Niemcy stoją na rozdrożu, prawda? Czy Polska powinna w jakimś stopniu replikować niemiecki model, który był do pewnego momentu, do teraz, był przecież modelem, który dał Niemcom wysoką, trzecią pozycję obecnie w rankingu światowych gospodarek.
Well, a number of excellent observations, I have to say, and a very, very good question. Let me go through your points, because you made some important points about Gerhard Schröder. Let's just start with your point about Gerhard Schröder. When he became, when he got re-elected in 2002, he realized he needed to do economic reforms, and he started the process. At the time, he did not yet relax fiscal policy. This was only as he did the reform. So the reform preceded the fiscal relaxation. And they didn't, it was not a strong fiscal overshoot. I think Germany had a fiscal deficit of 3.1 or 3.2%, and they got a warning from Brussels for this effect. This was not this was not a fiscal policy disaster by any chance. It was a small fiscal overshoot. They didn't want to make a fiscal correction because they felt on top of these structural reforms, this would have driven them over the edge when they fell over the edge anyway, but they didn't want to make this. And fully understandably so, I supported that decision. And it was the right thing. Today it's very different. Today it's the money, and there are no reforms. There are no reforms being discussed. The FDP, the small liberal party, wanted some reforms, but the FDP, was in government. It was in government from 2009 to 2013. It was in government now, and it never implemented any reforms while it was in power. So there isn't, we have to be realistic, there isn't a political force in Germany in favor of reform. I'm not saying there will never be, but for now we know this hasn't happened. The CDU was the party most likely to favor reforms. They talked about it, and now they're in government. They no longer want this. This is the same as under Angela Merkel. There were no reforms in 16 years. So that's the political reality. So we are basically in a situation that we opened the debt brake without reforms. So in that point, the conservative economists were right. That's exactly what happened. And I think Mario Draghi's position was slightly more sophisticated. He didn't, he talked about capital markets opening. A lot of his investments was private sector. He didn't just talk about the public sector. For the private sector to raise 800 billion, I think that was the number he made, 5% of GDP. That would not have been possible by government. This needed to be a massive private sector investment, and that would have required a completely different overhaul of the way the European financial sector works. The other point that you made was about innovation, about national arrogance, and why it didn't, why the animal spirits would not come in. Now, Germany was by that time no longer a functioning market economy. This is basically, in a functioning market economy, disagreement is normal. Disagreement means I produce something else than you do, and we'll compete. Functioning market economies are based on disagreement. They're not based. The German model over the years has become one of consensus. And the Germans struggle with the idea of competition. They have become consensus-based. This has become, today I was reading in the news, an article in the main German public broadcasting organization, the national television, the lead story was, is British math, does he actually know how to become work as a chancellor? And the quality criterion that this journalist put up was, is he able to compromise? As though that was the most important quality that a politician has, the ability to compromise. It does in Germany. If you want to run a coalition in Germany, Angela Merkel understood this, you need to compromise. You need to bring everything. You don't need to impose yourself. It's, you know, I think this is the most disastrous thing you can do because you need to solve problems. But that's not what the mindset is of political Berlin. The political Berlin mindset is used to everyone sitting around the table and reaching some sort of centrist position around the middle and everybody agreement. And as long as people agree is good. It almost matters little what they agree on. The main thing is that they agree. And, you know, that's sort of the problem. And I think that's what happened in the car industry. You know, in a competitive market, one of the three car companies would have disagreed. It would have tried a different approach. But what happened in the car industry specifically is that it became a regulatory enforcement mechanism. So the way you made money in cars was to enforce your technology on the rest of the market, not in Germany, but globally. For example, when they, you know, the AdBlue technology, which is the stuff they put in the diesel, in the, you know, the additive they put to the diesel, into the diesel tank. This was something where the German car companies imposed a standard for diesel companies all over Europe. They imposed standards in, you know, for braking systems, for all safety systems. It was all standards and percent. That was what the game was about. If you could invent something, have a patent on it, impose that standard, you would have quasi monopoly profits. And that system is now broken by the Chinese because the new technology breaks the entire model. And this is what happened. So the Germans didn't compete. The Germans were in a regulatory competition. The CEOs of German companies are not entrepreneurs. They're technocrats, and they're paid to be technocrats. They're technocrats that enforce regulation. So the idea, the principle, and I think this is, I was writing this in this book right in the beginning, contrasting the two management style, the old entrepreneurs that was very successful, and that sort of new technocratic, you know, form of leadership, which is very much the industrial political complex. And I guess in Poland, you know a thing or two about these type of economic organizations from the past. And this is very much the direction into which Germany has gone. May you remind me of your question again? Oh, Poland, yes, absolutely. The absorption, the ability of, and this, I think your point linked to this, your last point about can Germany, if they start produce the top products, could they do this? Of course, in business, if you produce a top product, people want it, they buy it. That's in the end the situation. The arithmetic rule is also that if you don't import and if you export, it means you're saving more than you investing. That's the economic logic behind that decision. You can be a very successful exporter. That doesn't mean you have export surpluses. That's something different. And I think we need to distinguish this. So I'm not saying Germany should export less. I said they should bring their savings and investments into balance. Because Germany has rules like these are tax rules, for example, that make it not very attractive for businesses to invest. This is, for example, to do with tax write-offs. They're not very attractive in Germany. They're very attractive in the UK. If you're in the UK, a business, I own a small business, it's very, very cheap to invest in a computer as a business. You get a third of the price back and you don't pay the VAT. So whatever the price is, you pay half. And I always suggest whatever I buy, it's half the price because that's the way the tax system works. Doesn't work like that in Germany at all. Less incentive to invest in Germany. So you have a lot of, and obviously the debt brake was another form of the public sector. Public sector is important. It's not the only thing. I think the private sector is more important, but it's the combination of public plus private sector investment that was driven down in Germany. It's sort of not a very attractive country for investment right now. And what it does, however, it produces output that is sold on world markets. So in a hypothetical world, in your hypothetical world, where Germany would do really good products, I think that is the kind of the hypothetical world of the 70s, 80s, 90s. Interestingly, in the 1990s, Germany didn't have a surplus. It produced very good cars and very good products, but it didn't have a surplus. The surplus is a modern thing. The biggest surplus was 8.5%, count surplus of 8.5% of GDP. This is absurd. And Germany at the moment needs surpluses in order not to have a recession. If Germany has a balanced current account, it is in recession. So this is my response. Now to Poland. Generally, it's not a good idea to imitate someone's business model. But there are tried and tested development models, and what Poland did after, in the wake of EU accession and afterwards was absolutely right to pursue a business model based on manufacturing and supply chain integration. This has worked. It's worked very well for Poland, and I see no reason why it should not work for a certain period of time going ahead. The crisis that Germany has is not a crisis that will be immediately felt in Poland. It's not like that German companies are closing down their Polish plants. I would not think of this as it might happen in one or two cases, but I would not see this is sort of the one part of their business empire that's probably still healthy. They have a bigger problem with their domestic production. The question, however, arises in Poland as Poland gets richer, same as it did for Germany. As Germany got richer, the question arises: is this model viable in the long run? And I doubt it is. I think the idea of running surpluses is, and Poland is a large country. It's in GDP terms. It was when 20 years ago, Poland was not a very big economy in GDP terms. It's fine for a relatively small economy to run surpluses against the world when a very small country, say a Baltic Republic or Iceland, when they run large surpluses, it doesn't matter. When a large country does it, it matters a lot. As Poland gets large, as the economy of Poland gets larger, and Poland has 40 million approximately inhabitants, Poland is approximately the size of Spain. It's about sort of the same order of magnitude in terms of people. If a country that size, runs, as a business model running surpluses, it's not that I object to it on a moral ground. I'm just saying it's not sustainable. But not sustainable mean it will end. It's not a statement of whether it should end. It's a statement of when something is not sustainable, it will end because it somehow it stops. In America, it's Trump. I did not predict that Trump would be elected. I finished the book in the summer, and Trump was doing well in the polls, but we didn't know. I had no idea who was going to win. We could have been under Kamala Harris, and we have lived in some kind of a Democrat paradise instead of where we live in today. But these things end. When something is unsustainable, it ends. And large surplus. The same for China's. China's model is also not sustainable because it depends on the rest of the world absorbing stuff. And if the rest of the world is happy as it was in the last 30 years, then it works, and then it stops working if there is and in the United States, and this is my reading of American politics, is that Trump is the most extreme advocate of trade disintegration. However, there is a very strong political pull to bring manufacturing back. Joe Biden did that too. It's not like a Trump thing. There's a very strong political pull to keep China away. Both Democrats and the Republicans agree on that. And our business models were very, very different from those of the United States. So I would think that the best way to look at this is for Europe as a whole to achieve a neutral current account, and for the member states of the EU to organize themselves in such a way that this is possible. And this will for a certain period of time still mean Polish current account surpluses, but the time will come when that will no longer mean that. And that means you still have exports, and it will not be, but it will be a different balance. It will be then a point in an economic development cycle where this model will have to adjust, and where consumption will increase, where investment will increase, and where the export surpluses will fall.
Dobrze, dziękuję bardzo za te komentarze. Chcąc podziękować Państwu za tak liczne zgromadzenie się tutaj, chciałbym otworzyć dyskusję właśnie dla Państwa, dla publiczności. Poprosiłbym o właśnie doskonale o zgłaszanie się. Będziemy przyjmować po jednym pytaniu i na zasadzie, tak? Nie, na zasadzie po jednym pytaniu na zasadzie ping-ponga będziemy tutaj odpowiadać. Także proszę bardzo, czy ktoś chciałby zadać pytanie? Może wyżej ręce, żeby tutaj też sobie z tyłu widać. Okay. I proszę mówić do mikrofonu dla potrzeby nagrania też. O to chciałbym.
Dzień dobry, Mariusz Sfora. Przedstawię się może trochę szerzej. Obecnie doradzam Energy Regulators Regional Association. Przedtem byłem członkiem Board of Appeal w Europejskim ACER-ze. Mówię o tym dlatego, że to będzie związane trochę z treścią mojego pytania. Stąd to takie dłuższe przedstawienie. Pozwolę sobie zadać dwa, żeby drugi raz nie wstawać, jeżeli można, ale będą jakoś tam powiązane ze sobą. Pierwsze pytanie dotyczy tego modelu, o którym Pan wspomniał, takiego, w którym polityka łączy się bardzo blisko z biznesem, co jest bardzo charakterystyczne dla niemieckiego systemu politycznego. Gdybyśmy na ten system nałożyli kalkę Acemoglu i Robinsona, tak? Czyli te elementy, które prowadzą do upadku państwa, brak instytucji włączających i z drugiej strony niemożliwość tego, o czym Pan pisze w książce, czyli uzyskania tego momentu schumpeteriańskiego, tego animal spirit, o którym Pani doktor wspomniała, jak rozumiem, to są podobne pojęcia, to w zasadzie co musiałoby się w tej chwili stać w Niemczech, żeby ten moment schumpeteriański mógł być uruchomiony? Czy wyobraża Pan sobie jakiś taki pokojowy model przejścia do gospodarki, która zwłaszcza jeżeli chodzi o tę new economy, nową gospodarkę, no, wymaga istnienia tego momentu schumpeteriańskiego. A drugie moje pytanie dotyczy, to pytanie jest mojej działki energetycznej. Tutaj gratuluję jeszcze raz panu tej książki. Ja z ciekawością przeczytałem, nie miałem świadomości albo wystarczającej wiedzy tych wszystkich powiązań polityczno-biznesowych. To jest bardzo ważne uzupełnienie mojej wiedzy, ale tak patrząc z perspektywy europejskiej, a zwłaszcza regionalnej, zawsze dziwiliśmy się konsekwencji wdrażania tego niemieckiego Energiewende, które jest oparte na odnawialnych źródłach energii. Pisze Pan trochę o tym w książce, to są źródła niestabilne, niesterowalne i z drugiej strony generujące bardzo, bardzo wysokie koszty. W wymiarze tym tutaj regionalnym to Energiewende łączyło się z kosztami dla innych użytkowników, dla Czechów, dla Austriaków, czy też dla nas, tutaj w Polsce poprzez tak zwane przepływy kołowe. I teraz tak, no z jednej strony nie macie taniej i stabilnej energii, która jest potrzebna bez oczywiście importu z Francji, tak? A co przeszkadza w rozwoju tradycyjnego przemysłu, a z drugiej strony nie macie tej taniej i stabilnej energii, która będzie potrzebna nowemu przemysłowi. Mam tu na myśli przede wszystkim data centers i te wszystkie elementy, które będą związane z rozwojem sztucznej inteligencji. Na koniec ostatnia rzecz to jest kwestia tego silnika diesla, tak? Niemcy, ja jestem szczęśliwym użytkownikiem samochodu z silnikiem wysokoprężnym. Nie zamieniłbym go na samochód elektryczny, Dlaczego tak łatwo dodaliście się regulacyjnie w Europie? Odpuściliście ten moment, w którym na poziomie europejskim pojawiały się regulacje preferujące samochody elektryczne.
Can you remind me of the first point? The second one, I do have it. The first point was, yes, you asked two questions. The first one, the second one was diesel. Oh, the Schumpeterian moment. Is it possible? Yes. Is it possible, as you said, through peaceful means? I'm not so sure. If you think I think the author who described why Germany and Japan were so successful after the Second World War was the Danish, or no, he wasn't Danish, he was American, but it had a Danish name, Münchau Olsen. The political economist Münchau Olsen, he had this very compelling theory that countries, after they are destroyed and start from scratch, as Germany and Japan did after the Second World War, they can basically start from scratch without these sort of social institutions and all this baggage that they had from the past. And they could start anew, and they created new successful economies. But as they get more mature, they would then develop institutions, and as Germany in particular, and Japan both did, slow down dramatically in subsequent decades. And so Germany is not going to return to the Schumpeterian moment by itself. This is not, countries don't do that when they've lost it. The United States has maintained it. They've never developed these sort of incredibly sclerotic systems. There was never an acceptance of high taxes, at least not to the extent that there was in Germany. The extent of bureaucracy. There has been quite a bit more in the last 10 years than before. But and this is obviously what the Trump administration is trying to redress. But it's the two economies operate on a very different level. So no, I don't see a return to the Schumpeterian moment in Germany. I can, however, see some kind of cataclysmic event. I'm not necessarily talking about a war, but a collapse of the model, mass unemployment, a complete destruction of the economic political system, collapse of the centrist political consensus. There could be all sorts of extremes that Germany could go through until it finds that Schumpeterian moment. I can absolutely guarantee you that the AfD will not give you the Schumpeterian moment. They like the Russian gas. They want the old stuff back. There isn't anybody in the German debate who is basically talking about we're talking about this here, but you're not going to have a discussion like that very much in Germany. That's not if you have people worried about the economy, then they say, can we have cheaper gas? Can we have cheaper energy prices? Can we have subsidies? It's not about Schumpeterian moment. Nobody is asking for Schumpeterian moments in Germany. Regarding the energy, you're absolutely right. There's a cartoon I liked in one of the German newspapers. It had the economics minister, Robert Habeck, holding a hairdryer with a very long cable that was connected to a French nuclear power station, and he used the hairdryer to get one of these windmills rolling. And it has some of the sort of the it captured some of the absurdity of the German energy policy. A good question how it happened. The nuclear power had happened for a long time. The Greens, I think it started with the Greens in the Schröder administration, and this whole gas business started at the time, because when the Greens, Schröder could only get to power with the Greens. That was the only power option he had, and he took it. The big compromise he had to make was the abolition or the phasing out of nuclear power. That was the decision taken by the administration in that period. Now, it was a longer abolition. I think at the time the abolition date was 2030. So we would still have a little bit of nuclear power left under that schedule. And that got Schröder to say, look, without nuclear, we need another energy source. And renewables was not on the radar screen of that generation. So for Schröder, it was gas. So basically the deal was, okay, Greens, you're going to get your phase out of nuclear, and I get the gas. And the Greens were okay with that at the time. So that's how the whole gas diplomacy started with Russia. And that went on for a long time. When the Greens were, as we proceeded through the last decade, the political consensus changed in Germany. While the Greens were not in power in that period, they became very influential in state governments and local governments, and they were ultimately very influential, if not the most influential party when it came to energy policy. So even before they came to power, all the big decisions were taken, the phasing out of coal, the Greens opposed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, not so much for geopolitical reasons, but because they didn't like gas very much. And it was the period when they and their advisors, and especially green think tanks, started to develop sort of ideas of renewable energies, and the whole system came about. And when they got to power, they kind of misjudged the energy demand. They took some very optimistic projections about energy demand, and as you said, data centers was not on their radar screen. And back then, maybe it wasn't on my radar screen either. I have to admit, like in 2020, 2021, today we think about it very differently. But you never know why you might need energy. I think I would not base my future on the idea that we will never need energy, that we will just living in completely energy neutral worlds. How did it happen that the Germans gave up on diesel? I think, they went to long extremes. They cheated on diesel emissions. They installed software devices into their cars. So they were really fighting to keep the diesel engine alive. But by the second part of the last decade, the German car industry had persuaded itself that if the Chinese can do it, we can do it too. And it's an easy thing because we've done the diesel, we've done the difficult part. We can nail this one. Huh? And they didn't take it very seriously. And the phasing out of the diesel car, they said, okay, we've got 15 years. I think they did not. I think I know my countrymen. They have a notion of hubris, a notion sort of not taking other people serious. And I see this again and again. I heard the other day an interview with the German space industry chief, or one of the big European space industry chiefs, a German a guy who was saying, yeah, Musk is what we're doing is much better than what Elon Musk is doing, and they were lauding their own sort of we do a lot more than he does, and it's probably all true what he said, but it's ultimately kind of underestimating. You're basically doing the same thing that the car industry people did, that the electronics people did. You're basically saying we're great. The others are just, Elon Musk is just some idiot who's just, some upstart. He's not to be taken seriously. And, frankly, and maybe he will fail. There's quite a large possibility that he might fail, both as a, politician and as a businessman. But, I would probably not underestimate him. And this is something, I would also not underestimate Trump. And that's sort of another sort of European speciality that we underestimate these people. And we underestimated the digital technology. So there's a pattern there. A pattern of underestimating, what others can do. We underestimated the Chinese. We overestimated the effect our sanctions would have on Russia. We keep making a lot of bad judgments, and they're mostly related to a judgment of how wonderful we are, how important we are, and about sort of the idea that everything revolves around us. And I think that's what's very much part of the psychology.
Mamy jeszcze przestrzeń na kolejne pytania. Widziałem, że doktor Wiliński wyrywa się tutaj, tu z przodu. Tutaj z przodu jest pytanie.
Dziękuję bardzo. Panie redaktorze, to co pan wyraził tym hasłem tytułowym Kaput, to myślę, że można powiedzieć, że ma dwa wymiary. O dwóch już dzisiaj trochę mówiliśmy. Pierwszy to jest spadający standard życia, obniżający się przynajmniej potencjalnie, ale myślę, że realnie dla wielu Niemców. A drugi aspekt, i tutaj ten być może wadliwy ordoliberalizm, a drugi aspekt, pan wspominał o pewnej pysze, ale to też jest erozja takiej autodefinicji Niemców. My Niemcy potrafimy robić dobrze auta, my Niemcy liczymy się na świecie ponieważ. Te dwie rzeczy się zmieniają, te dwie kategorie się zmieniają. A przede wszystkim jak radykalnych zmian w sferze społeczno-politycznej pan się spodziewa w związku z tymi zmianami.
If I answer the question of what I expect to happen, or what I expect should happen, these would be two different answers. What I expect to happen is decline to continue. Decline to continue. Societies decline. Argentina declined for like a century. It happens. It was one of the richest countries in the world before the First World War, and over many, many years it declined. Is it possible that Argentina prospers? Yes, it is possible. And the same for Germany, but this decline can go on for a long, long time. And I think the conditions for decline to continue are actually very strong. An aging population, high degree of wealth, but a low degree of innovation, low degree of risk-taking are conducive to this environment. We see, the immigration, and I think it's a Western issue in general. Our fear of immigration, I think Germany is a country that needs immigration simply to fill jobs, but Germany gets the wrong immigrants, so they have never been able to manage this. It's a series of issues. The problem that you mentioned is this: like if you have a system that is based on your own superiority, that's very dangerous, because one day you may not be superiority, and then what are you then? And it's not. It would be easier if a system was based on values, like you're saying. We're making an honest effort. We're making good quality products, and I think that's better to say that we're not cheating. We have a reputation for solidity and quality, and we want to maintain that. I think that would be a good way forward. And to have a commitment to technology, to investment, to innovation, rather than defining yourself in terms of sort of some league table position. This was always the media always celebrated German export. It was this export world champion. It's a nonsensical economic category. There's no wealth created by that, but it's the idea that we had more exports than others, and then suddenly we were no longer the export world champion because China was the export world champion, and suddenly our national self-confidence was in tatters. So it's a bad way to define yourself that way, as sort of in terms of relative to others. This is economy isn't like football. It's for industries, for companies. Yeah, they compete, but countries don't compete in the sense that countries are different from companies. Companies have markets in which they compete, because that's what competition needs. It needs a market, your infrastructure of a market. For an economy, this is different. I mean, the German economy does not compete with the Polish economy. The German economy, what the job of government is to make possible that companies can operate in their markets. And I think that generally I don't think they have, and I've got to say it's difficult for anybody. The British, where I live, the British haven't found. Their model broke as well. Their model broke after the global financial crisis. They had a model of trickle down. The city of London generated a lot of financial profits, and all this money trickled down to the provinces, and that no longer worked. And then they had Brexit, a lot of unhappiness, and changes of government. They're still unhappy. The British model isn't working, and yet nobody fixes it. I think that's very normal. And I think I would expect the same thing in Germany. And I think there will be lots of pseudo solutions, lots of ideas people have about what we need to do, or maybe we need to cut taxes or raise taxes. People have different suggestions. None of them will obviously work, but it's not about taxes. It's about people things.
Mamy jeszcze przestrzeń czasową na jedno pytanie. Tam na końcu sali jest, proszę bardzo.
Dzień dobry, Krzysztof Grzechczyn. A czy nie można powiedzieć, że właściwie w Europie Zachodniej czy w Unii Europejskiej odchodzi się od demokracji parlamentarnej? Mamy ostatnio takie przypadki, jak na przykład w Rumunii unieważnienie wyborów prezydenckich, we Francji Le Pen została wyrokiem sądu odsunięta następnych wyborach prezydenckich. W Polsce na przykład ostatnim wyrokiem sądu nastąpiło odebranie licencji dwóm konserwatywnym stacjom telewizyjnym. I tutaj ten konsensus, można powiedzieć, taki biznesowo-polityczny sprawia, że elity i polityczne, i biznesowe się przyciągają, się łączą i w tym momencie to też zachodzi na rynku medialnym, no i nie ma alternatywy politycznej, tak? Nie ma społeczeństwa w Europie Zachodniej czy w Unii Europejskiej nie mogą głosować na alternatywę. I w tym momencie ta polityka gospodarcza, no ona będzie się pogłębiać, tak? Oczywiście kolejny problem to jest wielkość poszczególnych krajów w Unii Europejskiej. Czyli to daje możliwość na przykład tym krajom, które należą do centrum, jak Niemcy, Francja, przerzucanie kosztów kryzysu ekonomicznego na kraje słabsze, typu Polska czy Europa Centralna. Tak więc tutaj no, można powiedzieć, że z tą prognozą się pana można zgodzić, mianowicie, że ten kryzys się będzie pogłębiał. I teraz jest pytanie, no, kiedy będzie ten taki punkt przecięcia, tak? Czy przejście do nowego jakiegoś systemu politycznego. Dziękuję bardzo.
Yeah, I agree actually with your analysis. I have expressed the same concerns about what happened in Romania and to Le Pen, not because I support them, and I can absolutely assure you that I don't. I have expressed the concern because I've seen what happened to Donald Trump in America. I live in the UK, and the BBC, which normally is quite neutral, reported the Trump trials as though this was just the end of Donald Trump. He would not be campaigning. This was this was the end of Trump, and it was the opposite. The trials strengthened Trump. They mobilized his supporters, and I expect that to happen in Romania, and I expect that to happen in France, I expect it to happen quietly, not in terms of revolutions. People say, "Oh, the French are not upset; they're not on the streets." Yeah, the Americans were not on the streets either. The farmers in the Midwest, they don't demonstrate, but they voted for Trump. They're very certain of their support for Trump, and they went out. So this stuff, I would think, and here I'm slightly more optimistic than you are, I think it backfires. If you're banning politicians, and same in the media. I have a long experience of media, and I completely agree. The media are, I wouldn't say a racket, but the media certainly only allow a very narrow views of opinions. However, this is no longer, they no longer have an oligopoly amongst each other. They've lost the oligopoly. The mainstream media are in many countries, especially in the United States, in the United Kingdom, becoming secondary players. When I published the book in England, I had a lot of interview requests, also from the BBC and many others. The ones that I favored on the top of my list were podcasts. They were not the mainstream media, and the podcast did a lot more for my book than the mainstream media did. In England, that might be different here in Poland or in different countries, and certainly different in Germany. But it's a tendency of how. So the idea that you can suppress views through this type of racketeering, sort of opinion racketeering, I don't think it can function. So your question is what does it need to take for this to be resolved? I've got to tell you that I don't know. I certainly do not believe that every problem has a solution. It doesn't mean the end of the world if it doesn't. Societies can, I said, people can decline. It's not like, decline is not the same as war and destruction and Armageddon. Decline is a state of, maybe a state of unhappiness, maybe a state of, dependence, maybe a state of lack of action. But what I think the lesson should be for Poland is to watch out and to be mindful of those around you, and the fact that their interests may not always align with yours. And I wouldn't say that Germany and France are pushing the costs onto other countries, but I would certainly say that Friedrich Merz's priority will probably not be the EU, but it's more like Germany inside of the EU. I think it's about leading Germany, pursuing German interests, not necessarily European interests. And I think that the generation that pursued European interests, I think that ended in the 1990s. I haven't seen European leaders of that quality today. So in terms of business models or economic and political models, I would say, dependency, as we see this with the United States, dependency has its limits, and everybody wants to ensure a certain degree of independence and ability to move in other directions over time.
Wydaje się, że ten przykład Japonii chyba jest bardzo dobry. To jest państwo, które przeżywało najpierw tak zwaną straconą dekadę, potem stracone 2 dekady, a teraz przeżywa stracone 3 dekady. I to nie jest żadne załamanie, nie ma krachu systemu społecznego, ani krachu systemu politycznego, prawda? To jest jakiś przykład. Dążąc już do końca tej dyskusji, poproszę jeszcze panią dr Schulz o komentarz zamykający.
Ja nie chciałam zamknąć dyskusji, ale może się odnieść może na zakończenie do tego, co powiedział pan Münchau na końcu, że rzeczywiście można powiedzieć, zwłaszcza, że widzę tutaj bardzo dużo młodych ludzi, że jesteśmy w takim momencie, nazwałabym filozofa Kanta, gdzie rzeczywiście jesteśmy zobowiązani do pewnego nawet męstwa, używania własnego rozumu i własnych rozwiązań i nie liczenia tylko, czy nawet pewnego takiego wygodnictwa, podpinania się pod czyjeś rozwiązania, bo widzimy, że jesteśmy w takim momencie historycznym, że każda głowa, każda idea i każdy pomysł jest bardzo ważny i tak samo Polska jest też zobowiązana do tego, żeby wnosić swoje konstruktywne projekty i rozwiązania w tej sytuacji. To może tylko tyle na zakończenie.
Mr. Münchau, a closing comment, please.
Yeah, I think what you just said is absolutely right. I think, there is if a society that is young and hungry will succeed in this world, and that is different from a society that's old and kind of saturated. Germany is like Japan, very much so. Japan is a pretty decent country. It doesn't feel like it's got a lot of, every country has its conflicts. It doesn't feel like it's collapsing or that the social tensions are. It's not the case at all. So you can operate a country. You just take a back seat. You're not going to be at the cutting edge anymore. You're not going to run the world. And countries that are younger, countries that are hungry, that have development ahead of them, are in a different cycle. And maybe the old Germany is a role model. Maybe the current Germany, I would be still a partner. It's still your neighbor. It's not far from here, and it's certainly an ever-present reality. But it is probably worth diversifying. That would be my.
Bardzo dziękuję. Mam nadzieję, że ta dyskusja zostawiła Państwa z poczuciem niedosytu. Nie da się omówić wszystkiego i jeżeli ten niedosyt będzie Państwa męczył, to najlepiej go wypełnić zakupem książki, prawda? To można uczynić tutaj z tyłu pokoju albo zamówić ją online. Jednocześnie zachęcam także do śledzenia komentarzy pana Wolfganga Münchaua, Eurobriefów na Eurointelligence. Zachęcam też do czytania komentarzy naszych analityków Instytutu Zachodniego. I chciałbym powiedzieć, że to jeszcze nie jest tak naprawdę koniec spotkań z niemieckimi badaczami, którzy akurat mieszkają w Wielkiej Brytanii, ponieważ 23 kwietnia o godzinie 10 organizujemy spotkanie z Andreasem Fuldą na temat także poruszanych w książce Wolfganga Münchaua, na temat powiązań gospodarczych i politycznych pomiędzy Niemcami a Chinami. Palący problem obecnie. I na tym chciałbym zakończyć. Bardzo dziękuję naszemu gościowi, że zechciał pojawić się w Poznaniu.